My name is Eric Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9 to 5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Welcome to the Franchise Secrets podcast with your host, Eric Van Horn here. Today's guest is Scott Abbott, and Scott's got an amazing story, been around franchising forever, a guy that I look up to, and anytime I get to talk with him, spend time with him, hang out with him, it's always incredibly valuable to me. And so I'm glad he broke away from the lake life to give us 30 minutes and talk about customer experience and everything that goes into that. It's something that he's passionate about, I'm passionate about, I think is missing in some areas in franchising. And so, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. Really appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. Why don't you give the audience a quick background on your story? And then I just want to dive right into it today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, you bet. Name's Scott Abbott. I'm one of the founders of 5-Star Painting, and at the heart and soul of 5-Star Painting, when we started that business in 2005, it was really a response to what we found was really missing in the home services industry. I had called about 1,000 painters myself and doing some market research on that industry. And this is while I was doing my undergrad at the University of Manitoba in marketing and finance. Calling them, I found out that roughly 20% answered their phone of all the people I called. And I would just pull ads out of the Yellow Pages back then to find their numbers. And I found it really interesting because these guys are paying between $5,000 and $15,000 a month to be in these Yellow Page ads, and they just wouldn't answer their phone. And so I just asked myself the question, like, how much money is just being flushed in the toilet? And if you did that right, if you nailed the customer experience properly from the very beginning of that whole interaction, how fast I could grow a company. And so we really built at the time, it was just really a call center, but it's now morphed into a customer experience center. And we built that from the ground up to support a painting franchise system called 5-Star Painting. We took off. We were one of the fastest growing companies in Utah for, 8 or 9 years. We had triple digit growth in many years. And ultimately, it ended in a successful sale of the company to what was then called the Dwyer Group, now called Neighborly. I always believe in the model, but more importantly, I always believe in the fact that if you take care of the customer, that a brand can thrive. And in the home services industry, your storefront is your very first customer interaction, right? So whether that can be a phone call, that can be a text interaction, that can be a chat. But if there's no answer on the other end of the phone or the other end of a text or a chat, then your storefront it's looking shabby, and no one wants to come shop at a shabby real estate or restaurant. I've been very passionate about, in the home services sector, especially nailing that very first interaction with the customer. And so I liken this kind of for those of your listeners that maybe you're looking at, a health and fitness concept that's got a storefront, or a restaurant concept that has a storefront. When a customer drives up to that building, if the paint's peeling, if the sign is missing some letters, or they're not lit up properly, if the bathroom is really dirty, all those things that are what we call good hygiene in those kinds of concepts. In home services, it's really comes down to, did you answer the phone when they called? Can they even text you? If you are running a maid services company, do you let your customers text you to engage and buy your service? If you're not, why not? If they go to your website and they got questions, can they just chat with you and ask questions and have someone answer? In my view, we are now no longer competing against what I would call chuck in the truck in home services. We are now competing against Amazon and Google. Okay. Consumer interactions with Amazon, think of how easy that experience is. They go on, they find what they want, they press one click and they buy. Are you letting your customers go onto your website and book an appointment, book a sale, buy a cleaning, buy a pest control service? If you're not, why not? And so ProNexis, the company that I now run, since we sold 5-Star Painting, we kept the call center piece. We just began focusing entirely on how do I make sure that customer experience in whatever medium what we would call omni-channel. In any method possible that a customer wants to buy, we enable it and we make it happen. And I cannot believe, you look at the trend lines that are happening right now, and it is absolutely astounding how fast the consumer is now making the assumption that Chuck in the truck should answer a text, a chat, an email, a phone, all equally, or let them book online. And the entire home services sector just has not responded properly to that.
Because you're saying you're not competing against Chuck in a truck anymore. It's not because they're getting better. It's because of the consumer experience with Amazon and everybody else out there that has leveled up. Is now that's the standard of what they can expect.
Absolutely. And the younger generation obviously rely more and more on texting and on chat. They don't want to talk to you. You need to be able to address that. And if you don't, then you're especially in this COVID environment. What's interesting is that right now, Eric, I'm sure some of your listeners are in maybe the restaurant business, or maybe they're in the health and beauty business, are thinking, my gosh, how do I survive in this environment? Well, in the home services industry, we are booming.
I talk to you guys.
Everyone is stuck at home, and they are looking at their house and they're saying, I want a new bathroom, I want a new paint job, I want a new outdoor patio, I want to get rid of the mosquitoes. And they're calling like crazy. Our customers' business is way up. So in this environment, are you allowing your customers to interact with you virtually? Can they get an estimate without even talking to you? Can they just do it through a video conference call? These are the questions you have to ask yourself. And so ProNexis is all about empowering that interaction. In fact, the name stands for that very thing. Pro is home service professional, and Nexus means to connect. So we're about connecting home service professionals to their consumers.
Give us a sense of how much, because you get the call volume, you see what's going on across several industries and home services. How much has that increased year over year? Compare, quarter over quarter a year ago.
I'd be happy to share something with your listeners as well. A study was done, and I'll share what our experience has been as well at ProNexis. But a study was done by Domo and Thumbtack. Thumbtack's they sell leads to the home services sector. They're one of the larger players, like Home Advisor or others. At ProNexis, we're actually integrated with those companies so that we get first dibs and first shot and first crack at all those leads that come in for our clients. Some sectors have been negatively affected. So, for example, home cleaning had a tough time with it because they can't get in the house. Mm-hmm. No one's letting you inside. But exterior painting is way up. Mm-hmm. Landscaping, way up. Mosquito control, way up. So some of these guys are up 30, 40, 50%, and some people are down 30 or 40 or 50%. It really came down to who got locked down and when and what areas. So there's an actual study I can send out to you. You can connect to this podcast that actually you can go in by sector, look at that sector and see how lead flow has changed in March, April, May, June. And it's pretty incredible data. So in general, the home service sector is up, but there are a few lines that did get negatively impacted.
So I'm going to get you into the mastermind, my franchisee mastermind. If anyone's interested, it's franchiseemastermind.com. And it's a bunch of us franchisees that are learning and growing and listening to some smart people, smarter than ourselves, like Scott. So I begged him to come on. And so he's coming on one of these days. And we're going to be talking specifically about the franchisees in there. We'll be asking him questions on how do you work with Home Advisor? Like, how do you get that lead and actually close a lead? Because Scott, I hear it all the time. People say, I don't want a Home Advisor lead. I can't close that lead. That's just a waste of money. What's your experience with leads like that are like paid leads?
There's no question that what you just described is accurate. A lot of home services companies get really frustrated with paying $100 for a lead to Home Advisor, and then ultimately they feel like the lead quality is not there, right? And this isn't to say that doesn't happen, that if you buy 10 leads from Home Advisor, that 4 of those or 3 of those may be garbage leads ultimately, and it just didn't work out. But when we looked at this at 5-Star Painting, there's a few things that we had to consider. We had to consider what we could control. I can't control the quality of the lead that Home Advisor sells me. I can control whether I buy, and I can control how I handle those leads and how I make that effective. So once again, there's some research out there that's been done. It's been done by the leadresponsemanagement.org website. And if someone goes there, they can look at a few things. Like, as an example, when you do buy a lead, you should respond within seconds, if not minutes. Okay. That has a direct impact on your ability to close that lead. In fact, if I walk back in time to when I was the owner of 5 Star Painting and Home Advisor came on the scene, we were one of the very first companies buying leads from them. And our franchisees were all complaining about how bad quality they were. And we were converting roughly 20% of the leads we bought from Home Advisor, resulted in an estimate, not a sale, an estimate. So just a shot at getting some business, right? And so I had a lot of franchisees, lead volume go way up, but then they weren't closing. And so they were dropping off. And I went and called Home Advisor. I said, look, this is a problem. And they said, well, tell me your numbers. I said, we're at 20% conversion. And they said, that's fantastic. So it made me realize that, there's a lot more people out there worse than us. So we started introducing automation. First of all, we went ahead and integrated. We were one of the very first companies that integrated with Home Advisor. So when a lead is sent, it's done through an API drop into our database. It's not done through an email to get rid of any of that noise that may happen. And then second, we called and automated a call within 60 seconds to that lead. And when we called the lead, we would call from a local number, not a 1-800 line. We called from what's called local presence technology. And when we did that, we drove the conversion rate on leads from 20% to about 55%, almost a 2.5x return on investment. Same lead, same company, but we focused on what we could do to help our franchisees convert those leads. And the science gets even better and even more interesting on this. Okay, calling really quickly and calling with a local presence technology is important. Being integrated with Thumbtack, Home Advisor, Porch, and the like, that's important. But also understanding other things like I have a full-time analyst who just sits there and looks at all of our clients and when their leads come in and when we're calling and what percentage we're converting. Because ProNexis only charges when I make a sale or book an appointment. So if I call
say that again.
Yeah, ProNexis only charges when I book a sale or make an appointment. Okay, and that's been in our DNA from the beginning. We do it that way because we wanted to align ourselves with the franchisees. Okay, they want the sale, and we get that. So I'm not charging by minute of time calling. I'm charging if I make the sale or book the appointment.
It's pay for performance.
Totally is. And by doing that, it means I have an analyst I'm paying because it pays to do this, who sits there and looks at how can he optimize what we're doing to get the highest conversion rate possible. So just squeeze as much juice out of that orange as possible. And on this study I mentioned to you on leadresponsemanagement.org, they go into the day of the week, the time of the day you should call, all of that in terms of analysis. And here's an example of this that we saw. If we called a customer at 8 o'clock in the morning, okay, their likelihood of answering on the hour was much lower than if I call at 7:55. And the reason why is most of our world revolves around start times on the hour or half hour, okay? Which means they may be starting a meeting or they may be, heading, whatever it may be, they have an appointment at that time. But if you call off an off hour time, 5 minutes before, 5 minutes after, they're more likely to answer. And so here we are just playing with exact times of the day to call, and we're doubling our conversion rates. And so it's that kind of thing where, I do have some companies or clients that I work with that, they really want to control that customer experience. They want to have a full-time person. They're paying, $4,000 or $5,000 a month to be their CR rep. And I get it, but I want you to think this in this context. In all the research we've done, if a home services company has a full-time employee, they're paying roughly $40,000 or $50,000 a year. They will only get to 65 to 70% of all the calls that come in. In other words, more than a third of all the calls that hit you will not be answered. They get voicemail. So then I hear some people say, well, I'll call them back. If they leave a message, they may move on right to the next person, right? Mm-hmm. So look at the cost of that. Now, the cost of my service is about $600 a month, depending on your lead flow. Let's take the average. I can give a company 24/7 support, inbound and outbound, with a service level at that. We track this in terms of abandonment rates. What percentage of calls that come in don't get answered? It's about a 4% abandonment rate. So in other words, 4% of the calls come through will not get answered by a live agent, versus 30% for a full-time person at $3,000 or $4,000 a month. So
what about the part-time, or what about the chuck in the truck? What about the person that doesn't even have a full-time person dedicated to that? So if a full-time person's 30, what is it's got to be way worse than that.
Oh, he's at 20 or 30% answer rates, right? So he's missing. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So over half the customers that call chuck in the truck don't get answered. A guy who's a franchisee that's paying someone full time, he'll get to 70% of his calls. Using ProNexis for 1/6 the cost, you get 24/7 support and you have a 5% abandonment rate. So it's all makes all the sense in the world to outsource this solution. And then you also get all of the outbound stuff, like we mentioned here with Home Advisor and Thumbtack and Porch and so forth, where when leads come in, I mean, I had one franchisee tell me one time, Scott, you saved my life. And I said, why? He said, well, because when I'm driving on the I-15 in Utah, going to a paint job, and an email comes in my cell phone, I want to check it because it's probably a lead that came to me from Home Advisor or Porch or Thumbtack. And if I don't respond to that thing within a minute, I just took $50 and flushed it down the drain. So when I'm using your service, I know it's just taken care of. I get notified, but I know ProNexis is handling it all for me. And it gets booked to my calendar. It really is. And I really view this as we're helping simplify the lives of all these home services companies so they can focus on what they do really well. They do great service. Focus on the service. The customer experience piece is something they can outsource and allow ProNexis to specialize in for them at a much lower cost.
First of all, franchisee out there, when you're talking to them, what do they typically think their answer rate is or response rate? And what is it in reality once you go in there and do some actual number crunching?
So that's a really good question. So because it's unseen, franchisees don't know how much they're missing, right? They don't see all the calls it missed. They just missed the phone call. They don't know very few of them actually know. So we actually do something called speed test. This is where a brand comes to me and says, hey, Scott, I'm the franchisor. Whenever I call the franchise, he doesn't answer. So if he's not answering my phone call, I'm wondering if he's answering the phone call of the customer. So we say, okay, look, we will call all your franchisees over 2 weeks on 5 random days at 5 random times. And we'll document how fast they do their phones. I've never seen a brand do better than 65% answer rates. And Eric, I'm talking to you. I won't mention the brands, but I'm talking about the leading. No, I can't do it. They'd kill me. I'm talking to you about the leading home services brands in North America. These are the big boys, and that's what they're seeing and experiencing.
I believe it because when I was an area developer, I've been an area developer, regional developer for 3 different brands, and I would even retail and service-based brands. And we, as an area developer, which is kind of like a franchisor, would call and we'd do it from different numbers so they wouldn't know it was us. And we would call and do these test calls, and it would just go to voicemail. There'd never be a return call. And if there was, they were like, fumbling around, doing something at home, at an appointment, and it was just not quality. Quality aside, they weren't on their A game trying to get that first call to the next point in the sale. That's right. So it was just a disaster. So answer rate is one thing, but the quality of that answer is a whole nother thing. How do you talk to me about how do you guys see that? How do you guys deal with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Once again, we're dealing with perceptions here, right? Some franchisees think they are the best salesperson, and other franchisees,
especially if they're a salesperson, right?
Sure, they all think they do the best job. And so when I have a conversation with a franchisee about what we offer, I just don't even fight them on that. And I say, look, you know what? You're maybe a 9 or 10 out of 10 on quality, and I might be a 6 to 8 out of 10 at the beginning, but I'll get to 8 or 9 over 5 or 6 months as I get to know your brand and we have more experience with it. So we'll come close to you. But I said, I don't think you can argue with me on the fact that you're like a 4 out of 10 on answering, getting to the call, and we're a 10 out of 10 on getting to the call. So when you add that all up, the reality is, and we've done studies with some brands on this, a brand actually started or launched franchisee with our solution. And they compared that cohort to franchisees who didn't use us, that launched without us. And we're talking about 30% increases in growth just off of having ProNexis being the only differing factor. But coming back to that, we're really big into what we would call transparency and quality management. And so the key here is we're not going to be perfect because these are human beings ultimately that are answering the calls and fielding questions. And we don't know all the answers to all the questions for every service yet until we get into the business. But we do give full transparency. So we give all of our franchisees that use us a dashboard they can go into. All calls are recorded. They're also dispositions, so they can go inside and they can hit a button and pull up every single call where it did not result in a sale. So every time I failed at converting something, they could hit a button, see all of those, get all the recordings, They can call those customers back themselves if they want to try and convert them themselves, or listen to the recording and see why we didn't win it. We'll tell them in a summary report if it was because of price, timing, out of area, whatever it may be. Giving them that transparency allows a franchisor and the franchisee to see where we can improve. And then they quality score our calls on that recording using 5 different metrics. Were we polite? Did we win the sale? Did we say the correct greeting? Stuff like that. And all that's coming back to us to give us feedback that we then use to help train our agents improve quality. So we always will, we may start at a 6, but we're going to get to 8, 9, or 10 over the next several months. And to this point, by having this level of transparency and making it possible for the franchisees and the franchisor to give us this feedback on quality, we're also giving them very valuable information around, what lead sources drive the most calls, drive the most conversions, are converting the best, and agent performance, which of my agents do the best on their calls. So I can start aligning agents in certain segments. We actually organize our center into 3 different groups so that we've got people who are more order takers. These are people who are just setting an estimate. We've got people who actually make the sale over the phone. Think of mosquito control, maid services, cleaning, and so forth. Those we quote price over the phone, make the sale. It requires a different type of person to get the sale over the phone and collect a credit card than just book an estimate. And then we've got what we would call empathetic sales, where we do work in senior care, in education, where you're dealing with mom or dad or your children. And so empathy is so important around that conversation. Call length is really, we're not trying to drive the call to minimum time. We're more about how can we elongate the call, make the people feel comfortable, build the brand, and be empathetic. And so those 3 different groups, we move agents around in those groups where they align and fit the best to get the best quality for our customers.
And you can't do that as a franchisee, even as a franchisor. You and I have talked about the franchisor, the roofing franchise that I'm starting with Josh and Zach and John. And we are, we had internal conversations. Do we have our own call center? And a lot of franchisors do. They have their own call center. And we could have done that. I've seen some really good ones and some really poor ones at franchisors. Yeah. But for us, it's just another thing that we're going to have to do for our franchisees, or we can outsource this to somebody that's already proven it out, that can take it and is already a winner in that space. And so I believe, I think we're going with you guys. You probably, you okay, good.
Yeah, we're doing your work. Thank you.
And so all of our franchisees in the roofing business will be connected with you. And I know we've done technology stuff to make sure that the CRM integrates, everything integrates through APIs and all of that. But what do you say to a franchisee out there? And this is the question I was going to ask earlier, that's out there listening, like, I've never heard of ProNexis before. This sounds incredible. I'm just a franchisee, a part of a franchise system. Then they don't do anything and they just give us scripts. What can a franchisee do?
This is a great question. So first of all, if you're a franchisee, often a franchisor will do what's called a pilot to try something out. And they always are looking for people to test it out for them, right? So you get yourself and a couple other franchisees together, 5 or 6 of you, and you say, we want to try ProNexis out. Let's test it out and show the data to the franchisor, and then it can be made available to the other franchisees. The reason why you want to do that is our pricing model is such that you ultimately benefit substantially on pricing versus going solo. A franchisee of a system that's part of a group that's using us at one time, their pricing is in that $600 range. But if you are chucking the truck and you want to hire me, it's almost 2x that. So you're going to pay over 2 times more money a month for the same service you'd get done. It's one of the benefits of being a franchisee. Mm-hmm. You're part of a group of people that can buy together and get better purchasing power. And so there's no question there's this benefit to people who come together in a small group to get that test done. When it comes to the franchising model, one of the reasons why franchisors should not get in the call center game, I'll just speak to this because it's something I learned. I started with a call center in my business. It was kind of the foundational piece of 5-star painting. But I learned as I grew this business that the more I did for the franchisees within the franchisor, the more complicated our relationship became. Okay. Yep. So we would do their online marketing for them as well. We also provided all their software, and we did their call center and their ad fund and their royalties.
And let's say you were a 10 out of 10 in all of that. So just to set the stage, Let's say you were a 10 out of 10 in all that, providing massive value at a very good rate. So keep going.
So, and I would tell you that we probably were really close to 10 out of 10.
I believe it.
And we were 9, maybe some days. The call center had some bumps in its growth, but on the software side, the digital marketing side, we were really crushing it. I mean, our lead cost was in the low 20s in there, and our franchisees were making a really great ROI on what we were doing. But the reality is that you'd often have a franchisee say to you, "Hey, I'm paying you a 5% royalty. Shouldn't I just get this for free?" And that complicates the relationship.
Yep.
And Neighborly taught me that. Separate it out. Only have one hand.
Why did they teach you that? Like, what was it about them? Because you've been around franchising and done a lot before Neighborly. So what was it? How come they taught you that?
When they bought the business, they said to me right away, "Scott, we do not want to go to the franchisee to collect fees for royalties, or for royalties and call center fees and technology and ed fund. It complicates the relationship." As soon as we segregated those things and pulled them apart, and now the franchisee just went to us like a vendor, the relationship on both sides went way better.
I believe it. I can absolutely see it. And I get advice from you. I get advice from people that have done it, that have been there, that have playing a much bigger game and much further along in this game than me. And that's how we get better faster. One last thing. I was going because I got to let you go. For franchisees out there that don't have a call center in option and they want to work with you, when you do go to your franchisor, you do ask for a pilot program. Can you be a tester? And that's common in franchising. If you've never experienced that, that is common. Typically, it's top performers that do things like that. So if that is you and the price is more expensive to be that testing, your franchisor is probably going to kick in some, half, all of that to help test that program with you. So this is a normal conversation with the franchisor. I obviously believe in this because we're doing it. And I've seen the proof. And I also, just from all the masterminds and stuff that I'm a part of, I see call centers working, and I see businesses that aren't using them the right way, and they're trying to do it to save a buck, and they end up losing in the short term and long term. There's so much that goes into it. One of the things that I'm getting more and more passionate about, Scott, is franchisors that are utilizing technology in the right way. We'll have to talk about that at some point, but that's exactly what you're doing. I mean, it's technology and human resources. Those two things combined, magic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric, for having me on the call. I appreciate it.
Thanks a bunch, Scott.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.